thanks to those of you who've joined nice and early. We'll get started really shortly. Great to see so many people join in. We're going to start really shortly. We'll just give it a couple more minutes to allow any latecomers to join. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session about the Big Give Christmas Challenge. It's great to see so many people have joined. We want this session to be as useful and helpful for you. So I hope you get what you came for out of this session. My name is Alex Day. I am the director of the Big Give. I've recently returned from a secondment. I've been with the Big Give for about 5 years in total. And joining me on this webinar is Sahil. Sahil's our partnerships exec, and he's been with us for just over a year. Just to kind of run through the agenda of what we'll cover in this session. If we could go to the next slide, thanks, Sahil. We're just going to give a little bit of background about the Big Give and what the Christmas Challenge is. The benefits that we hear back from charities all the time about what match funding can offer. How the campaign works, and we'll spend the bulk of the time on Q&A. Just in terms of housekeeping, this webinar is being recorded, and so having been on countless Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Hangouts over the past few months, I know that sometimes there is connectivity issues. So if you are struggling to hear or your internet drops, don't worry, we are recording all of this and we'll make it available to everyone who came this morning and others afterwards. And most importantly is that you will see a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We want to try and field as many questions as we can. So as Sahil and I are talking, please feel free to kind of enter your questions, and then we'll come to the Q&A at the end. And we'll try and get through as many questions as we can. We've also had a good number of questions submitted in advance, so we'll try and cover those as well. If there is things that go unanswered, we'll do our best to kind of come back to you by email to answer those questions. So Sahil, do you mind going to the next slide, please? So just a bit of background about the Big Give. So the Big Give was set up in 2007 by Sir Alec Reed, who founded the Reed recruitment business. At that time, he was handing over the chairmanship of the company to his son and wanted to focus more on his philanthropy. He's always been very altruistic, and he found it frustrating that there wasn't a platform where, as a philanthropist, he could search for charities and do his due diligence and make a commitment of support. So he decided to set up and fund the build of the Big Give platform. And that was launched in 2007 with lots of PR behind it, lots of charities registered on the site. And the match funding element first kind of was introduced in 2008. And so in 2008, Sir Alec decided to put up £1 million of his own match funding so that charities could have their donations doubled. And the deal was any donation you receive on the Big Give platform would be matched in a certain time frame. And that proved to be hugely successful. So that match funding ran out in 45 minutes. And from that point forward, Sir Alec and the team at the time realized that they were onto something. And so whilst the Big Give kind of still retains that ability to kind of showcase your work and receive donations through the platform, most of our energy and effort and focus now is on running kind of match funding campaigns. And there's two opportunities to take part. So match funding campaigns that the Big Give organise, where we secure a chunk or all of the match funding from philanthropists that we work with that we call champions, as well as giving charities the opportunity to run their own match funding campaigns on our platform. Next slide, please, Sahil. So since we did that our first foray into match funding in 2008, we've helped raise over £132 million for thousands of charities up and down the country. I think it's really important to stress that we have a really wide range of charities that we work with. So from the biggest charities in the UK, the household names, your Prince's Trusts, your Red Crosses, your cancer researchers, all the way down to really small volunteer-led charities. So there is something here for everyone. And in terms of the match funders we work with, again, a huge range of foundations, private companies, individual philanthropists, public funders, the lottery organizations. We've worked with a really wide breadth of philanthropists and funders as well who provide the match funding. We recently ran a match funding campaign in response to COVID-19, an emergency appeal, which raised money for the National Emergencies Trust, which then distributed funds through the Community Foundation network across the UK. And that campaign ran for about 8 weeks and raised over 1.3 million. We actually have a campaign starting next week called Champions for Children, which is focused on charities working on the issue of child poverty in London, which will run for just over a week, starting next week. And we hope to raise about £3 million through that. And then, of course, while you're all here, we have the Christmas Challenge, which starts on the 1st of December. And I'll hand over to Sahil, who's going to explain a bit more about how the Christmas Challenge works and the benefits for taking part. Over to you, Sahil.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be speaking to you today, and thank you for joining us. Yep, I'll just go straight in and explain what the Christmas Challenge is and how it works. So it is the UK's biggest match funding campaign, and it runs for 1 week every December, and it launches on Giving Tuesday every year, which this year is 1st of December. It is a digital fundraising campaign, so all donations are made online and they are matched by us. And donations to participating charities are doubled. And the match funds come from two sources, from the champions, which are provided by Big Give, and the pledges, which can be major donors, businesses, organizations that are provided by the charities that are taking part. And I'll just explain about how about last year's Christmas Challenge. It featured nearly 600 charities. It was our biggest ever campaign. We raised just over £15.6 million in total for the 600 charities. And there were 25 champions taking part supporting those charities. And there was about, you can see, just over 41,000 donations across the whole campaign for that 1 week. So it was really a big campaign for us. So the way we measure impact on charities is that we ask charities to complete a survey after each Christmas Challenge, just to get the feedback from them. That feedback is really important for us to gauge how the Christmas Challenge helps charities and how we can improve and what's working for charities. From last year's survey, 95% of charities said they would recommend it to the Christmas Challenge to other charities, which is something we're really proud of. And obviously we want to try and keep improving and make that figure even higher so that it works for all as many charities as possible. I'll just give the overview of the benefits of match funding. And from the survey that we take, these are the 3 things that charities regularly feedback to us, is that the resilience of developing current income streams and growing new ones has Christmas Challenge helps with that. The Christmas Challenge also helps charities with their digital fundraising skills, either improving the existing skills they have, or for new charities new to digital fundraising, helps introduce them to digital fundraising. And also profile. So charities really feel that the Christmas Challenge has helped increase their profile and sort of the projects they're raising funds for. I will just go into a bit more depth about each of these points, starting with resilience. So the key thing here is that, especially now, obviously, with the situation that we're all living in at the moment, which social distancing and the limit to like how big events can be, in-person giving has been sort of very much hampered by that. I'm sure you must all know. And so digital fundraising has become more important than ever for charities. And it's we think it's really important that charities continue to develop their digital fundraising skills and their online presence. And we really think that the Christmas Challenge can help with this. I want to highlight a point about the Christmas Challenge Awards every year, that we run the Christmas Challenge Awards after the Christmas Challenge ends, and it's for charities that have done really well. And there are different categories to the awards, and we have a newcomer category. And last year's newcomer winner was not only a first-time participant for the Christmas Challenge, it was also their first ever digital fundraising campaign. And I think that just sort of does show that Christmas Challenge isn't just for experienced charities that have already done other digital fundraising campaigns. If you are completely new to Christmas Challenge and digital fundraising, you can still take part and you can make a success of it. And I'll talk later about how we can help with that. Charities regularly tell us about how the Christmas Challenge has helped engage with supporters. Obviously, engaging with their current supporters and making them excited about the prospect of having their donations doubled. But also the two other types of supporters. One is attracting new supporters through the Christmas Challenge. Over 90% of charities that took part last year said they had at least one donation from a completely new supporter that they've never even heard of or they've never spoken to before. And the other one is engaging with lapsed donors. So charities said to us that they found that the Christmas Challenge is a good way to engage with those donors that haven't given to them in quite a while. They said that the prospect of match funding has encouraged those donors to give again, especially after quite a long time. So this can be a good way to try and boost your donor base and supporter base, and obviously unlocking the match funding from the champions to help fund your projects or the causes that you're raising funds for. We commissioned a report about the impacts of match funding on charities and donors a couple of years ago, and one of the key standout stats that we got out of that report was that 82% of donors said they were more likely to give when they see that match funding is available for their donation, because they understand that by giving more, there's more match funding that goes to the charity. And so that really encourages them to donate. And not only that, it also encourages them to donate more. And we have an example of this with our COVID-19 emergency campaign we ran with the National Emergencies Trust. We were running their match funding campaign, but they also had a regular fundraising page on their own website. And for 1 week during that campaign, we took over their fundraising page on their website, and all donors were directed to the Big Gifts match funding campaign. And then NET reported that average donation increased by over 24% during that week. So I think that just underlines the impact that match funding can have on the donors' sort of willingness to give more to charities. Skills, as I said before, I'll explain how we can help you have a successful campaign and develop your digital fundraising skills. The Christmas Challenge is definitely a great opportunity to try something new. As mentioned before, if you're a completely newcomer to digital fundraising, this can be a great way to dip your toe into it and develop those skills, learn about social media marketing, learn about how to engage with your audience online, and also try new tactics to generate donations. One of the award winners from last year was Tommy's, and they won the Best Innovation Award. And one of the things that they did for last year's Christmas challenge was that they engaged with small businesses selling products on Etsy and eBay and asked them to donate some proceeds from their sales before the Christmas challenge week to their Christmas challenge campaign. And that's something that I hadn't tried before, and it was really innovative way of finding new income streams. And the way we help with you develop these digital skills, the digital fundraising skills, is that we host webinars, and we also have a full suite of resources based on case studies from previous Christmas challenge campaigns. And I like to stress that all of these resources and training that we provide is completely free for charities. We're really invested in the success of the campaigns. We really want to see every single campaign do as well as they can. And the best way we can do that is providing you with these resources. And so this is just some feedback we had from some of the charities that attended the webinars last year and have delved into the resources that we provide on our website. And the webinars are hosted by the FSI, so we work in partnership with them and try and deliver the content that you need to help plan your campaign. One of the other feedbacks from the last year's Christmas challenge survey was that 87% of charities felt that the Christmas challenge helped develop those online fundraising skills, and they feel that these skills are something they can take going forwards for other campaigns that they'll be running online throughout the year, and for the help with their long-term sort of online presence and online strategy. Just talk about how the Christmas challenge can help build your profile of your charity. Obviously, building morale externally, getting your donors excited about match funding and your participation in this Christmas challenge. That's something that's obvious from what charities feed back to us. But something that we didn't sort of pick up on before was how it actually helps charities morale internally. A lot of charities report that it's helped bring different parts of their organizations together, and when they're focusing on Christmas challenge and building up to their campaign. And one thing that one charity I remember talking to after the Christmas challenge said they had just something simple like having a donation thermometer in their office during the Christmas challenge week, and every time that they marked it off with some more donations, I just really got everyone in their team excited. And also what we find is that charities that are successful as well, sometimes they engage not only the staff working for the charity and volunteers working for the charity, but also engaging their trustees, and their trustees get involved in their campaign. So it's a good way sometimes, maybe if your trustees aren't always fully engaged with the charitable activities, maybe this is a good way to try and get them engaged and sort of participating in that. If they don't normally do that. Be part of something bigger. Around Christmas, as you all know, that it's a big time of the year for charities fundraising calendar. And we think from what charities have said to us is that being part of an umbrella campaign of the Christmas challenge helps cut through some of that noise around Christmas and fundraising. And we also marketed the campaign as well as a whole. And I think what charities have said to us is that being part of the Christmas charity has resonated with donors, and as well as the match funding aspect of it. And the Christmas charity normally does trend on Twitter during that week. So using a hashtag, and it helps them sort of engage with new audiences online. And obviously in the build up to the Christmas challenge, it gives them something to talk about, something to engage with the supporters about, and just build up to their campaign. And this is just a promo video. Oops. Sorry, I was just going to say, I'm just going to show you a promo video from what we ran last year for the Christmas Challenge. We had Alexander Armstrong, the host of BBC's Pointless, as our celebrity ambassador. So this is the video. Sorry.
Just to say, if anyone's struggling to hear the sound on this, it is available on YouTube. So look it up on the Big Give YouTube channel.
Yep, I understand. Alex said there's no sound. Sorry about that. Yeah, the video, if you go to our YouTube channel, search the Big Give YouTube, the video is online there. Thankfully, there are some subtitles, but that's just an idea of how we marketed the campaign. Sorry about that. Yeah, as I mentioned before, just over 90% of charities reported securing donations from new supporters last year. As I mentioned, the campaign trends on Twitter normally, and we also market the campaign to our donors. So we have a quite extensive donor base that we encourage to visit the website and make a donation, try and find a charity that they resonates with them and that they want to make a donation to. So these aren't donors that have been directed specifically to a campaign. They're just browsing and wanting to make a donation, browsing our website, and they find a charity and that speaks to them and they make a donation. And the average donation on our website is around, during the Christmas Challenge week, is around £130. So they can become major donors and long-time supporters, potentially. We've even heard from some charities that it's been much more than £130. It's a couple of £1,000 we've heard sometimes, from completely new donors that they've never spoken to, and even once or twice it's been corporates that they've never engaged with, they've never even talked to them before, that have supported their campaign. So this can be a good way to attract new donors and potentially even major donors. So I will now explain how the actual Christmas challenge works and how the match funding model works. There are two stages to the application process for the big Christmas Challenge. The stage 1 phase, which the deadline is 5 p.m. Friday, 3rd of July, and the pledge collection phase, which is 5 p.m. Friday, 28th of August. The stage 1 application involves completing the information for the project you're seeking to raise funds for. So that'll be details of what the problem is, how you're trying to solve the problem, how much funds you're seeking to raise through the Christmas Challenge, and what you're going to spend funds on. And then and charities must have a minimum income of £25,000 for the last accounting year and be seeking to raise between £4,000 and £100,000 during the Christmas Challenge to be eligible to apply. Charities that are automatically enrolled, charities that complete the stage 1 process are automatically enrolled into the pledge collection phase, and this involves securing pledges for the campaign. Pledges make up part of the match funding pot, and the pledges at this stage are just pledge promises. Pledges are only paid after the campaign has ended. Pledges can be anyone. They can be your existing supporters, businesses, trusts and foundations, even the trustees. And once the stage 2, the pledge collection phase. Once the pledge collection phase is closed, we then review the applications and the champions assign the champion funding. And we notify charities of how the champion funds have been allocated in September. And so going into the Christmas Challenge campaign, you will know how much champion funding you have ring-fenced before your campaign starts. So from this example, we have on the right-hand side, the charity has set an overall fundraising target of £20,000. This will be made up of £10,000 in online donations, which will be made during the Christmas Challenge week, 1st of December to 8th of December, and £10,000 in match funding made up of £5,000 in pledges and £5,000 in champion funding. Yeah, so for example, you found one pledger who will back your campaign with £5,000, and the Big Give has also managed to find a champion who will support your campaign with £5,000. During the Christmas Challenge week, the first set of donations that amount to £5,000 will be matched by your pledger. Once your pledge funds have been exhausted, the second set of donations that amount to £5,000 will be matched by your champion funder. This means that from your campaign, you would have raised £20,000. This will be £10,000 from the online donations, £5,000 from your pledger, and £5,000 from the champion funder. And it is important to note that if you do not meet your online donation target, from this example, £10,000, whatever you do raise will be matched. So it is not an all or nothing situation. From this example, say during the Christmas Challenge week, your online donation target is £10,000, but you end up raising £7,500 instead. So you will still receive £5,000 from your pledger and £2,500 from your champion. So what happens next? To apply for the Christmas Challenge, either log into your Big Give account or sign up for a Big Give account and click on Big Give campaigns and apply now, Christmas Challenge 2020. If you're unsure if you already have an account with us, send us an email to info@thebiggive.org.uk and include your charity number, and we can check if you have an account with us and who's the contact person from the account. We can get that amended for you if needs be. And if you want further information, if you visit our website, if you visit that URL, or if you go to our website and click on How Can We Help, and then Christmas Challenge. So that page will include results from this last year's survey, some FAQs that we put up there, and also if you scroll to the bottom of the page, we have posted some of the case studies from some of the Christmas Challenge award winners from last year. And so they're really interesting reading and gives you a flavor of how to have a successful campaign. And if you already have an account with us, you can log into your Big Give account, click on support, and then click on Christmas Challenge to view the full range of resources. We will currently, the marketing resources are out for last year's Christmas Challenge, and we will be updating them over the summer for this year's Christmas Challenge. And if you do have any questions for us after this webinar has ended, please feel free to send us an email, and we're always happy to help and hear from you. This ends the presentation portion of the webinar. I will now pass back to Alex, who will lead on the questions and answers, and we'll be both be answering your questions.
Great, thanks, Sahil. And I appreciate we covered a lot there. So maybe we could keep that slide up, actually, that last slide, just so to reiterate, we've had a few questions in about kind of the application process and that sort of thing. So yeah, if you do have more questions on that, all of the details are on the website. But again, we're here to answer any questions that you may have. So if you do have outstanding questions after this, please do get in touch on the email address on the screen. We've had some questions submitted in advance. I'm going to cover a couple of those first, and then we'll move on to some of the questions that we've had during the webinar. We had a question sent in saying, can we apply to raise funds for call costs? So the short answer of that is yes. When you submit your application, the first stage application, which Sahil referenced, we do ask for details of kind of what you're intending to spend the money on. So, you know, you have to talk about things like your impact and your budget. But you can frame those answers in terms of, you know, the work that you do overall as the charity. That's absolutely fine. I think I would say, you know, that the encouragement here would be what would work best for you and your donors. Do you think your donors and all your potential donors would respond to a call cost ask versus a more restricted ask? So that's up to you. In terms of our champions, particularly at the moment, we're keen to try and stress with them the importance of unrestricted funding for charities. So whilst not all of our champions that we work with would be willing to, some are, and we're pushing hard to try and get as many of our champions up for supporting unrestricted costs as possible. So short answer is yes, you can apply for core costs. Sahil, would you add anything onto that?
I think if you're going to apply for core costs, and just make sure when you outlay what you're going to be sort of spending the funds on to be as detailed as possible. I think that really helps, rather than just putting you're going to spend this X amount on core costs or X amount on unrestricted funding. If you can break that down further, that will help your application, the strength of your application.
Brilliant, thanks, Sahil. We've had a couple of questions about the kind of situation at the moment with coronavirus and how that affects things. One of the questions was, will we be able to change our project after applying and before the campaign starts if the situation changes? Sahil, what would you say to that?
Yeah, so we're trying to be as flexible as possible. If after applying and maybe after even the champions have give you the champion funding, you find that you need to change your project, if you send us any information on the changes you want to make by the 31st of October, we can make those changes for you. We'll need to first run them past the champions to make sure they are comfortable with them. And if they are, we can make those changes for you. But I think 31st of October is probably the latest we'll be able to make any changes to your project.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had quite a few questions in from smaller charities, so I'll try and bunch these up together. So quite a few charities have emailed in saying we're quite a small local charity with kind of limited resources. Firstly, what should we focus on in regards to fundraising? I would say that going back to my first answer is what do you need? And we don't want to be the tail that wags the dog. I would say do what works for you as a charity and what works for your supporter base. So it's quite hard to answer that question. I would be guided by what you need as an organisation rather than what we suggest on that. Sahil, would you add any further guidance to that?
No, I'd probably just reinforce what you said. It's about what you need. Don't go into a Christmas challenge raising funds for what you don't need or something that you're trying to fit into the Christmas challenge, because I don't think that's going to work. Just apply for what you need.
Great. We've had another question from a smaller charity on the same vein saying, are champion funders sympathetic to charities in our situation? So again, the answer to this would be yes. As I said right at the very start, we have a huge range of charities that we work with. Over the past few Christmas challenges, the median income, which is kind of the average that we work on, has been about £500,000 income for charities. So that gives you a sense of the kind of the types of charities that we support. But within that, there is a huge range. And I think looking at last year's statistics, there was about, I think it was about 15% of our charities had an income of £100,000 or less. And they were charities that received champion funding as well. So, there is appetite. Again, we work with a huge range of champion funders, and some are particularly keen to support smaller charities. So there is definitely something for everyone here. The other question we've had from a smaller charity is around what's the minimum we need to raise in pledges in order to take part in the campaign. Sahil, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so normally it's a minimum of £1,000 in pledges. So that's for previous campaigns that you need to raise in pledges to be eligible for champion funding. I think there's two things that are important here. Is that, say, for example, when you first apply, you put your pledge target as £5,000, but you're struggling to meet that deadline by the end of August. As long as you still raise £1,000 in pledges, you'll still be eligible for champion funding. And also, with the current situation, we're trying to talk to champions and see how they will support charities. And it may come to a situation where after the pledge deadline that we find that maybe charities have struggled with raising pledges, and so there may be scope for champions to be flexible in supporting charities that have not met that £1,000 threshold, or charities that haven't raised any pledges. But we think that the best way is your best chance of attracting a champion sponsor is to work as hard as possible to raise pledges by the end of the deadline. And do you have anything else to add to that, Alex?
Yeah, no, I mean, I suppose to follow up on that, we've had quite a few questions, Sahil, about kind of what advice would we give for people who are struggling to find pledges or think that they may struggle, particularly in the current climate? What have you been saying to charities who've been asking that over the past few weeks?
One thing is to definitely ask your trustees to see how they can help. Trustees normally have good networks and maybe networks within businesses as well. So definitely engage with the trustees, and sometimes that charities don't always realize that they can be a potential source of pledges, and also trustees themselves can be pledges. If you don't have any major donors, remember that the minimum pledge is only £100. So if you have donors that are unable to give to you online, and so they won't be able to donate to your campaign during the Christmas Challenge week, this may be a good way to engage with them and get them involved in the Christmas Challenge campaign and ask them to be a pledger, because pledges are paid to you after the Christmas Challenge has ended, and they're paid to you in any way that's convenient for the pledger. So it may be worth going to your donor base, finding out how supporters regularly give to you, and maybe segmenting your donor base and asking those ones that always give to you offline if they would maybe hold off giving to you this year until the end of the year, and if they would consider being a pledger for your Christmas Challenge campaign. And I know this may be hard, especially in the current climate, but if you never engage with local businesses, maybe that could be one avenue to go down. Obviously, with the current climate, businesses may be more reticent to be supporting charities, but on the flip side, we have seen how a lot of communities are banding around local charities at this time, because more people are vulnerable. So businesses, on the flip side, may be more likely to support your charity.
Great, thanks, Sahil. Yeah, I would just add to that. I think asking a supporter or a potential supporter to be a pledger, particularly if it's a first ask, is a great opportunity, because, for example, if they were to pledge you £1,000, that potentially helps unlock £4,000 for your charity. So an additional £1,000 in champion funding and £2,000 in online donations. So, emphasizing the 1 to 4 kind of multiplier for those pledges is a really good way of trying to encourage people to pledge. And as Sahil has said, if you have donors that give to you offline, this is a really good opportunity to engage with them. And I think we've had a question around that on the Q&A about trust and foundations. Often trust and foundations can only give by a check. So this is a great opportunity to engage with trusts that you potentially have a relationship with and ask them to be your pledger.
Yeah, we do have a guide on how maybe charities can approach potential pledges. So yeah, if you go into that support section and click on Christmas Challenge, there is a guide about that if you want any further advice.
Great. We've also had quite a few questions around the kind of success rate of charities getting champion funds, and then what happens if you don't get champion funding. So last year, in terms of the charities that actually raised what they needed to in pledges to then be considered for champion funding. So as Sahil has said, the minimum needed for that is £1,000. So for charities that hit that threshold or above, the success rate was quite high. So it's probably about 3 in 4. So 3/4 of charities that got to that stage then went on to receive champion funding. For those charities that don't get offered champion funding, we still offer the opportunity to take part in the campaign using just your pledge funding as match funding in the campaign. So unfortunately, we don't have a bottomless pit of money. We would love to be able to fund every single charity, but we don't have the champion funding. Although we're working hard to secure more champions, we don't have the champion funding to support every single charity. So we do offer charities the opportunity to still take part in the campaign using just their pledge funds as match funding. And about half of the charities that got to that point last year took up that option. So because of all of the benefits that Sahil mentioned earlier on, in terms of still your existing donor base giving more than they might usually would, picking up new supporters, an opportunity to learn new skills. So there is still the opportunity to take part even if you don't get champion funding. So we've had a question about how much time and commitment is required for the Christmas Challenge. What would you say to that?
Yeah, charities, you do need to put some time or quite a bit of time into planning and marketing your campaign. I probably can't quantify in terms of hours, weeks, or days, but I think I'm going to also preempt a question that we had as well about the pitfalls and success, what makes a successful campaign and what pitfalls to avoid, is that spending time, as much time as you possibly can, on planning and marketing your campaign. That's the most successful charities carefully plan their campaign before the actual Christmas challenge starts, and the ones that we see that don't reach their target are the ones that have spent very little time in doing that. So it's as much, it's about as much time as you can give towards the campaign. It's the key things that we see are getting all your, for example, your marketing communications ready before the campaign starts, because the campaign goes by so quickly, you don't actually have time to be that reactive. So having things like your emails ready to send out at different milestones when you reach X amount of donations, what type of communications you want to send out on social media, getting all of that lined up before the Christmas challenge starts. Getting things like videos recorded so then you can post them during the Christmas challenge week. Also, a thing to remember before the Christmas challenge starts is maybe doing a survey of your current donor base and finding out what types of messages they respond to most, and this will help tailor your message for the Christmas challenge and give you a chance to be more engaging with potential donors. So, in terms of time and what makes a successful campaign is giving as much time as you possibly can to marketing and planning your campaign before it starts, so that as soon as you have a champion offer in September until the start of the campaign, you should start to already be thinking about what you can do in terms of planning and marketing.
Great, thanks, Sahil. Another question, I think this is probably one for you as well. What makes a successful campaign and what are the pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, as mentioned before, it's about planning. When you have that champion offer, think about how you want to frame your messaging going out in the lead up to the campaign, getting all of your marketing ready, and the pitfalls is thinking that the campaign will be taking care of itself. We market the campaign as a whole, but also your success of your campaign relies on marketing your own individual campaign to your supporters. So yeah, planning and marketing are the key things to do to make it a successful campaign. And if you, like I mentioned before, if you go back to the case studies on the Christmas Challenge page, that gives the examples of what successful charities have done to reach their target by the end of the Christmas Challenge week.
That's great. Thanks, Sahil. Moving on to some of the questions we've had throughout this webinar. And we've had a question about eligibility. So can you repeat the eligibility criteria to take part? So the Christmas Challenge is open to any UK registered charity. So if you're in Scotland or Northern Ireland or registered with the England Wales Charity Commission, or if you have exempt status but still are able to claim gift aid, you are eligible to apply. The only other eligibility criteria that we have is that you need to have an income of £25,000 or more as per your last audited accounts. And the reason that we have that as an eligibility criteria is it's at that threshold that charities need to submit accounts with the Charity Commission. So that helps us in terms of our kind of due diligence with charities and on charity applications. We're quite a small team, so unfortunately, you know, we're quite resource constrained ourselves. But so having that threshold in place makes it a lot easier for us to conduct that due diligence. We often get asked for what about charities with an income of less than 25k. I would say, unfortunately, that is one of our eligibility criteria. However, there are other funders that offer match funding to much smaller charities. So I would give a shout out to Local Giving here. They're a platform similar to ourselves, but focus very much on kind of smaller to micro level charities. So if you are looking for opportunities to do online fundraising, feel free to check out Local Giving. If you don't reach that threshold, the pots of money available are much smaller, but that's certainly worth worth looking into as well.
I'd also add you must be seeking to raise between £4,000 overall and £100,000 through the Christmas challenge as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Had a few questions in about these slides and the Q&A. Yes, all of this is all being recorded, so we'll make this available to you afterwards. Someone's asked about recording videos and using video, Sahil, in terms of marketing the campaign. Can you give it any advice on best length of video to accompany the appeal? Is short and sweet best, or long or informative?
Definitely short and sweet. On something on Twitter and Facebook, people are very rarely going to sit through a video that's more than 30 seconds to a minute long. So keep it short and sweet. You don't have to have any fancy tech to make this slick video. You can just do it on your smartphone, and sometimes actually having it something recorded on the smartphone is actually better than having a fancy edited video, because it gives more realness to what you're recording. So yeah, 30 seconds to a minute maximum for any videos you're recording, and if possible, try and include subtitles and as well. There's a load of free editing software where you can just add subtitles, and that can help with accessibility as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Sahil. And we've had another question, which is around the big week. And can you give us, this is from someone anonymously, but can you give us an idea of what charities have done to market the campaign in the big week? I definitely point you guys towards the Christmas Challenge webpage and check out the Sahil's mentioned a few times about the Christmas Challenge Awards, which we run after the campaign's taken place to kind of acknowledge and celebrate the charities that have done extremely well through the campaign. And again, you know, there's a really wide range of charities that win those awards. It's not just about the kind of big boys. The charity that Sahil mentioned earlier that in the presentation that had first taken part in the campaign last year, and it was their first foray into online fundraising. You know, they had an income of about £400,000, and they doubled the amount that they were expecting to receive through the campaign. So there's lots of inspiration through looking at what other charities have done well. Sahil, is there anything that kind of stands out for you from last year's campaign in terms of something that you thought was just very cool in terms of getting donations in?
I'd like to go back to that Tommy's one, because I think that was a great way to engage with micro businesses that I hadn't seen before. So it's an unusual step. And yeah, and I think as well, if you have any type of celebrity supporter, if possible, get them engaged. But obviously charities don't always have that. But I think, yeah, that was probably the standout one, and I think that's why they won the Innovation Award.
Brilliant. Yeah, I did notice another question as well, just about giving this year and what our expectation is about how the current crisis that we face as a country and the world will affect donations for this year's campaign. The complete, candid and honest answer is we don't know. And I wish I did. I wish we did. I wish we could forecast, you know, how this current crisis, particularly the kind of recession that we're in, will affect donations. It's really hard to make that call. I know, you know, in the 2008-2009 recession, I know CAF published a report where I think donation levels overall, and this isn't specific to the Big Give, but kind of just public donations overall fell by about 11%, I think it was, during that recession. So I think we can, and probably everyone expects that there will be impact on charity giving as a whole. But you know, as for charity by charity, you know, it's a really difficult one to say. You know, what target you should set as a charity. I think it's probably right to be a bit more conservative going into this year's campaign. But obviously, you know your donor base, and you may already be seeing trends in how people are giving to your charity. So use what data you have, but also I think be open with your donors and speak to them honestly and openly about whether they are willing to still support you in this year's campaign. I think a call or an email, a personal approach goes a long way. So if you have the permissions to be able to contact particularly key donors, is have a conversation with them and ask them about what they anticipate you know, their ability to give this year in light of the need that you're facing as a charity?
I think just to add to that, certainly in the short term, generally I think as a general overview of the sector, donations have held up reasonably well considering the circumstances. You can see that from like the success of the Captain Tom campaign. But as you say, going into 6 months down the line, it's difficult for us to make that kind of prediction. But at the moment, it's as a sector, it's holding up relatively well considering the circumstances.
Brilliant, thanks. Sile, a couple of other questions about pledges. So here's one from anonymously. Do pledges have to be made through the Big Give website?
No, pledges are paid to you after the Christmas challenge has ended, and they're paid to you directly. So it can be by check, back transfer, any way that's convenient for the pledger.
Brilliant. But yeah, probably worth reiterating that the pledge, kind of each pledger has to submit a form on the Big Give website, but actually fulfilling that pledge, as in paying the money across to you as a charity, doesn't have to be through the Big Give website. And if they want to, but it doesn't have to be, which is why we said it's a great opportunity to engage donors that might only be able to give to you offline.
And once you submit your stage 1 application form, you have access to the pledge form, which you will need to share with prospective pledges. On
pledges again, this is an interesting one, Sahil, again submitted anonymously and potentially could be more of an issue this year. Do pledges ever renege for any reason on their promise to pledge? So you obviously mentioned that pledges have to fulfill their pledge after the campaign. What happens if they're unable to fulfill their pledge? I think it's fair to say we don't really face that situation.
It does. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. Sometimes pledges forget they pledge and then they don't want to pay what they're not in a position to pay. In that situation, you just need to find a replacement pledger. We kind of accept someone else stepping in and pay that pledge. So if you're able to, please find a replacement pledger. The other alternative is that if you have exceeded your target and the amount that you have exceeded your campaign target by covers the amount that the missing pledges, then we can accept that as a replacement pledge as well. So one thing I will probably say is that maybe try and keep pledges warm in the run up to the campaign. So maybe not emailing them regularly, but like just keeping them up to date about the campaign, just to keep them engaged.
Great. And another anonymous question which relates to pledges. You mentioned that the minimum donation during the campaign is £100. Is that right? The short answer is no, that's not right. So that's the minimum pledge. So the minimum total amount of pledges you need to enter the campaign is £1,000, but the minimum single pledge is £100. So you could technically get 10 supporters to pledge £100 each to get you to that £1,000 threshold. So the minimum donation that Sahil was referencing there was on the pledge amount, not on the donation.
I think as well, maybe they asked about that minimum amount of donation during the Christmas challenge week, and that the minimum amount of an online donation during the Christmas challenge week is £5, and the maximum is £25,000.
So again, something for everyone there. Sahil, we've had a question from Ray Holmes. Ray's asked, I think this is referring back to your example earlier that you shared about the kind of the matching pot example. Maybe you could skip back to that slide just so we have it up there. She's asked, if we have 5,000 pledges and £5,000 from champion funds, where does the £10,000 in online giving come from? Is that given by users to the charity, or does it come from a general online campaign pot that's split? Could you clarify this for me, please?
It's come from donors just donating to your specific campaign. So if you're selected to take part, you'll have your own specific campaign page, and then donors need to donate through that Big Give campaign page to have their donation matched for your campaign. So each individual charity has their own campaign page, and it's not a general pot of donations.
Brilliant, thanks Sahil. We've had a question from Samantha Williamson, who has asked, do we need to specify one project or the charity's general work, or multiple projects? I suppose Samantha's talking about the application here. Sahil, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah. So if you're applying for a project, you can only apply for one project. So you can't have multiple applications or multiple projects. And so what was the second part? You said there was...
So yeah, do we need to apply for
yeah.
one specific project or the charity's general work or multiple projects?
Yeah, and so I think that the second part about the general work goes back to that core course. You can apply for core course if you wish. So you can have a choice, either you apply with a specific project that you want to raise funds for, or you can apply for core costs for your charity, but you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, there's just one application, so it's up to you, Samantha, about what you choose to frame that, whether that's project related or just more in terms of your charity's general work. But as we've picked up earlier in the call, I think if you are doing it as a general thing, as Sahil's mentioned, it's good to frame it, in terms of your overall impact as a charity, rather than necessarily saying we're just raising money for unrestricted funds, if that makes sense. There's a question from Jonathan again. Jonathan Kirk has asked, there's an option of providing a video link with the application. So just so everyone is clear, we on each charity will have their own kind of micro page in the Christmas Challenge campaign, where it explains all the details of what you've told us about what you're raising funds for, including the opportunity to show media, so things like pictures and videos and quotes from your supporters. So Jonathan Cook's asking about the video that you can include here in your application. Jonathan's asked Sahil, can this be added or changed after July the 3rd, as we may wish to nuance the message differently for the pledges champions versus our general donors?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can change the media items yourself after applying and in the run-up during the campaign. If you want to make any copy changes, you'll need to send that to us, just because we need to clear them and make sure that they still are in relation to the project. So copy changes need to be sent to us, and we can make them for you.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just scrolling through the list of questions to see if there's any that we have missed. Someone's asked, I assume there is a step-by-step plan regarding dates, resources as a campaign page that we can access help with planning.
Sorry, can you repeat? Sorry, just...
It's all right, so I don't mind answering that.
Yeah.
This was from Anonymous. So yes, there's lots of guidance. If you log into your Big Give account, or if you're not registered with a Big Give, you can create one. There's lots of guidance on how to complete the application form, all of the key dates, and lots of support with planning. And again, the Big Give team here are here to support you. So if there's anything that's not answered through those resources, you can drop us a line at info@thebiggive.org.uk, and we will help you. We've had another question about the type of charity. I think, let me just scroll up to this one, from Verity Pfeiffer, about the type of charities that, please confirm if limited charities can apply. Our annual income is 315k. So Verity, yes, if you're registered with any of the charity commissions, or you have tax exempt status for charitable purposes, you can apply. And as your income is 315, that exceeds our threshold of 25k, so it should be fine. If you've got any other questions about that, please feel free to contact us on the email address. We've had a question from Lorraine saying, how soon after applying is the decision as to whether you've been successful? Lorraine, I assume you mean successful in terms of securing champion funds. If that's not what you meant, then do let us know. But I'll answer it on that basis. So as Sahil has mentioned, and as you can see on this slide that we're looking at now, the application process is in 2 stages. So you have until the 3rd of July to complete stage 1, which is just telling us about what you're raising money for, and a bit about you as a charity. And then the pledge collection is by the 28th of August. So you have the summer to then kind of reach out to your supporters and try and secure those pledges. I think it's worth saying, the sooner you complete stage 1, the sooner you move on to pledge collection. So the earlier the better. If you apply now, you can start collecting those pledges straight away. So we'd certainly encourage that. And as you can see from the slide, we start to then let charities know towards the end of September about whether they have received champion funding or not. So you're looking at about a 3 or 4 week turnaround in terms of knowing whether you've been successful in getting champion funds. But again, to reiterate here, even if you don't get champion funds, you're still able to take part in a campaign using just your pledge funds as match funding. Karen Wallin has asked another question about these applications. So maybe you take this one. So for stage 1 applications, this is for your info only, and it isn't the case of being accepted or not.
No, it's not. So it's just submitting your application. As Alex just mentioned, we review the applications with the champions after the pledge deadline at the end of August. So you'll find out in September whether you're being accepted for champion fundings or not.
Great. And we've had another question from Lucy. I think this is in reference to one of the points that we made about pledge funding. Lucy's asked, if we ask regular donors to hold off money until the campaign, can they times that by 4? Do you want to clarify that, Sahil?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, that just to clarify that there's the pledges and then there's the online donations, which are 2 separate things. So you can ask some of your supporters to be pledges, and then they will give that money to you after the campaign has ended. And one way of sort of encouraging them to be pledges is saying that by pledging, that their pledge can be actually worth 4 times as much, because then you could get the champion funding, and then also that will attract online donations. But the actual people donating to your campaign during the Christmas Challenge week, their donation will be doubled. I hope that's clear, but if it's not, let me know.
I've just noticed the time, it's 12 o'clock. I think we've got time for one more question, which is from Pete Hobson. So in this example that you've given, Sahil, if we only raised £3,000, what happens then?
So you'll just get £3,000 from your pledges. If you have multiple pledges, this will be prorated amongst them. Your pledger can, of course, still give you the full pledge amount if they wish. That's up to them. And then it's up to the champions if they still wish to give you any champion funding, and they're not liable to do so. So we couldn't guarantee that you will receive champion funding in that case.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sahil. Thanks to, maybe you could flick through to the final slide again, Sahil.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're 1 minute over. We had loads of questions. I think we got through them all, but if we didn't, please feel free to email us info@thebiggive.org.uk. Thanks so much for your time. We really look forward to reading through your applications. Please tell others that are in your charity network about this opportunity. And yeah, we really look forward to working with you all. Thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.